All right, let me get in Doug MacMillan. Doug, thank you very much for joining us this early. You have been reporting on this story with your colleagues at the Washington Post extensively about the town hall that the Twitter leadership held after this decision was formally announced. Give us a sense of how Twitter employees have been reacting to this news.
Well, I think that there's a mixed opinion. There's some concern among some employees, as you would have in any take private deal and any kind of leveraged buyout deal. Typically what happens is you're going to have some layoffs. And that was obviously one of the big questions that employees were asking is, what kind of changes will there be to management? What kind of changes will there be to employees? I think also Twitter is maybe not unique for Silicon Valley, but unique for any business kind of in this kind of deal. The employees really care about their products and the ideals behind the product. And a lot of the employees there, I think, are focused on it, have been in focus for many years on ensuring things like Scott was talking about, like making sure that the site is not overrun with spam, like that the site is not vulnerable to abuse. And I think there's been some concern if you focus on just what Elon Musk has said publicly about restoring free speech on the site, that his mission may be kind of at odds with what they've been doing for the past few years. So there's some concern. And we've also heard the other side that there have been some outspoken Twitter employees who say that they're excited for a fresh change. And they think that, that the site has languished as a public company. They've been beholden by quarterly earnings reports, by short-term goals, potentially with some fresh blood and leadership. And who knows what will happen with the management positions. The expectation is that the CEO will be replaced at some point, and who comes in to fill that role will be a big question going forward. But I think there may be, you might see some amount of Twitter employees and some part of this company be re-energized and rejuvenated by the idea of a new leader and a new direction for the company.
Right. Let me get Manish Maheshwari back into the discussion. Manish, some of the changes that Elon Musk has been speaking about the edit button, about changing moderation guidelines, about guaranteeing free speech on Twitter, about removing those permanent bans, that, of course, is a question that is doing the rounds as well. How difficult will be some of these changes that he has spoken about on Twitter? He has tweeted about them in the past. It's one thing to tweet. It's one thing to do them as the owner of a company. How difficult will some of these changes be?
Yes, so I think it could be relatively easier than being a public company, because when you're private, you are not subject to the same level of scrutiny that you are when you're a public company. And my view also here is that, Elon is a much better at executing. And also, I see him as someone who wants to make a few changes because he feels strongly about Twitter as a platform. So my personal view is that it would be easier now that it's going to be a private company.
You're saying that it could be easier as it is now a private company. And tell us about some of the things that could change in Twitter. There have been concerns from the employees, as Doug MacMillan was also pointing out. There are a lot of protocols to safeguard privacy, safeguard free speech that Twitter has put in over the last 15 years or so. What could possibly change at Twitter as a result of this takeover?
Yeah, I think, in my view, I think if you look at Elon's tweet, I think he does believe in free speech, and I think he will make sure that that does happen. That's what my belief is. I think where the change would come is, I think, a bit more aggression and a bit more growth orientation. Because if you look at the companies in the Bay Area, Twitter, though it has a lot of influence and a lot of name, I think from the point of view of daily active users, or also point of view of like the rate at which things are sort of growing there, it's not at the same level as other Bay Area companies. So I think my view would be that, yes, I mean, with him there, the execution might improve. Secondly, the dichotomy that exists between is Twitter a mission-driven company, or is it a company with a P&L, with a profit responsibility? That dichotomy will also end, because you can now take a longer-term call. You're not subject to quarterly earning reporting, and also you're not subject to the rules of the Wall Street. I mean, you can run it as a private company and sort of align. And having a single owner does provide that clarity. Now, as you rightly said, I think we will have to see how this one plays out. I also believe that because Elon and Jack are quite close, I think fundamentally, what has been happening before the change of guard happen, I think things might not change too much from there. The only thing would be that the pace of growth and the pace of change and the alignment of objectives is what I think will change, but not the fundamental belief that the platform would exist to. Yeah, the fundamental belief here would be that the platform will continue to exist as a platform for free speech.
All right, so that basic tenet will not change. You feel that there will be just more aggression in the way the business is run. But Doug MacMillan, to get you back in to this discussion, we believe that all those changes that Musk has been speaking about, that will take more time because there is a regulatory process that has to go through. Tell us what happens here onwards. And as the corporate accountability reporter for the Washington Post, what are you looking for in this deal?
Yeah, so the deal's not closed yet. They're expecting to close it this year. It's going to have to be approved by shareholders, which we fully expect to happen. The big questions that remain are, one, how is Musk actually going to finance this deal? He laid out some specifics last week in a filing that included some large loans lined up from banks. But he also said that a big part of his commitment is $21 billion in equity financing. And Musk does not have that amount of money laying around in cash. So how is he going to finance that? There's a lot of speculation that he will either sell part of his stake in Tesla or borrow against a large portion of his shares in Tesla. And what are the ramifications of that for Tesla? Are Tesla shareholders going to be concerned about the risk and the potential downside of him doing that? Another big question is, are there some regulatory roadblocks here? The sources who were involved in negotiating the deal over the weekend tell me that they did not see regulation as a big impediment to a deal, and they did not spend much time worrying about that in this deal. However, after it has been announced, there has been some voices raised from people like Senator Elizabeth Warren, who are concerned about the tax implications of the world's richest person potentially borrowing against a significant amount of his wealth to fund this, essentially a vanity project without really paying any capital gains tax in the process. Could he kind of run into some issues in Washington with this pretty large, sizable move to borrow against his own wealth? We'll have to see. There certainly aren't the kind of antitrust issues that would come up if a Facebook or if another large company in the social media world was trying to grow its share of the pie in social media by acquiring Twitter.
Right. That's an important point. We were coming to that. We're going to take a short break, but we request Manish Maheshwari, Doug MacMillan, and Scott Kessler to stay with us. Don't go anywhere. When we return, we're going to discuss how Musk really stands to gain. What does he really want? Why was he so determined to take over Twitter? Don't go anywhere. That's coming up.
Campus Activewear Limited, India's